Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dee Reinhardt with Illinois Worknet, and today we have a continuation of our technical assistance sessions that we started last week by doing an interactive participation. So if you have the ability to have your microphone open, or if you are going to chat with me, I've got the chat screen open so that I can see if anybody's typing. And we have phone lines open. You might have to unmute yourself. So last time we talked about the application, we talked about the progress page. What I want to do now is move on in this next session and talk about the things that happen in the rest of a customer profile. So who can tell me, just as a recap from last week, who can tell me what one of the very most important pages are that you need to know the link to? And you can type it into the chat pod, or you can open up your microphone and let me know the answer. Anybody? 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 I'm going to also bring something over here too. Go ahead.
Oh, hi, this is LaDon from UCAN. Sorry, I'm having technical issues, so I have to dial in.
Okay. So what's the most important web address that you need to know when it comes to this program? I see Megan typed in the progress tab, and that's not the answer that I'm looking for, but that is important to know as well. So if you want to type your answer in the chat pod, or if you want to open up your microphone, you can do that. And what I want to show you guys is also CYEP apply is a good one as well, but it's not the exact answer that I'm looking for. If you guys click on the participants at the bottom of your screen, where it says manage participants, you'll see your name. And if you click on the more, you can rename yourself. So in the future, if everybody could type in their name so that I know who I'm talking to and what organization you're with, that would be really good, because I don't know everybody's full names. So like T. Yarbrough, it would be great if you could put in the name I actually want to call you and what organization you're with. I'm going to move this back out of the way. And I'm going to move this back out of the way. All right, so I'm still looking for the answer for what the web address is that you guys need to know, where all of your resources are, all the training material, all of the everything that would be useful for you. And we talked about it a couple different times last week. I'm just testing you to see what your retention of knowledge is. CYEP partners page. Excellent. And thanks, Tammy, for actually typing it into the chat pod. That's the good one. All right, I guess I just had to frame that question a little bit better. All right, now, so from the progress page, we have all of our goodies on here that we need to keep track of. Now we're going to move on to what happens on the career plan tab. So before I click there, which will give it away, I want somebody to try and tell me what happens there. Anybody, anybody? You can open up your microphone and give me an answer, or else you can type it in the chat pod. Anybody? Okay. So I guess I'll move on since nobody wants to venture a guess here. On the career plan is where we actually set up. Thank you, Tammy. Yes, it's kind of where we manage client activities for their plan, for what we're going to do with them. So that's a good answer, Tammy. And if I could get this thing to click through, I'd be able to show you exactly. So here, this page right here is an overview of what's happening with that client. It's also the place where you can get their agreement, print a copy of it to keep a hard copy paper file if they need to sign it, and then you can save the status of what's going on with that customer for the agreement. You do need to have your customers sign off on the plan. So as you're setting it up, it would be a good idea to have them there with you so that you can talk about it as you go. The other parts of this is actually creating the plan. So what happens on the review assessment tab? You can open up your microphone and tell me an answer, or you can type it into the chat pod.
Isn't that just kind of where you see the results from the career cluster and the employment assessments?
Yes, very good. So under the review assessment, and who was that was just talking?
That was Anita from Project Oz.
Thank you very much. All right. On here, we have all of the pieces of the information that came from their application, as well as several of the test pieces that they would take through their Illinois Worknet account. So we have the skills and interests that came up, and because these people are tests, we can't get to the actual tests and get results in here. We also have their employment goals. This is the information that was put on their application, so you can see what they answered in advance. The education level also comes from their application. And is there anything else that comes from the application? From these tabs on here. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it a little bit better. Do any of these other pieces come from their application? The employment-related information comes from their application, as well as the barriers to employment. If during your conversation with them you discover that something else is going on with them, then you can always add something to it. Perhaps they have difficulty speaking and understanding English. Any of these items that have an up or down arrow means that there's more pieces to look at from there. Where could you, if you were going to add it, where would you enter TABE test results?
Would you enter that under more assessments?
Yes, you would. And there are several other items that you can put in there as well. So there's, you can select what type of assessment. Is it basic skills or an other assessment? And as you're filling this out, the options will fill in for you. And then you can pick an assessment name out of this as well. So thank you. Who was that just answered me?
Oh, that's Jay over at Project Oz.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right. So now we want to talk a little bit about where do you actually set the customer's goals? This is a good giveaway one. Anybody, anybody? Set goals tab. Thanks, Jay. So the set goals tab, excuse me, is right here in the whole career plan piece. And this particular customer doesn't have any goals yet at all. But why do you need to set goals? You can open up your microphone or you can type in the chat pod. Anybody, anybody? Regina says to help with a standard for development of the individual. And Tasha says to assist them with planning. And both of those answers are very good. And well, and Tammy says, so you know what direction you plan to go in. That's all great. All of those answers are very good. So here we add a goal statement. They can be very simple. It can be something as simple as get GED. There's a couple of different categories here. It can be support services, career plan, education and training, or independent living. So get a GED would be under what? Yes, education. Thank you, Tammy. And then is it a short, and Tasha too, and is it a short-term or long-term goal? I think that's a maybe, because it depends on how far out they were when they dropped out of school. So I'm going to assume for this person that they dropped out in their last year and they passed their constitution while they were still in school. So for this one, it's just going to be a short-term goal. And then under status, we want to pick whether or not they have started, whether they're on track, off track, or whether it's complete. So this also ties to another part of the plan, so that as you're marking that section, this one automatically gets updated. So we're going to put in here that they haven't started yet, and I'm going to add the goal. So now the other thing that I want to do is I'm going to add another real quick goal, and we're going to say that we're going to work full-time. And that is a career plan goal. It is a short-term goal again, and it is not started yet. So I'm going to have those two goals right here. Now, what good, or where do we want to go next to figure out what we want to do with these goals now that we've got them set up? You can open up your mic or you can type in the chat pod. And again, if you guys haven't already put what organization that you're with, if you go to the participants tab where all the people number are, and then hover over your name, there's a more where you can rename yourself. So please put in your first name and your last name and what organization you're with, so that we can kind of keep track of who's on the call. So the next step that we would want to do is we would want to build a plan. So we go in to that build a plan section, and as we're looking at that, what happens here? What do we have that goes on in here that we can use to our advantage? Anybody, anybody?
I guess I'm not exactly sure of the question you're asking.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I guess I'm not exactly sure of the question you're asking.
Okay, so on here, so thanks for asking that. on here we have two steps that we have to do. One of them is add steps that the customer needs to take, and the other one is actually edit and update the steps that we have added. So on here, if we click on this number 1 where it says system generated service recommendations, and Cynthia got that in there, we can pick whatever it is that we need to add for the customer. So we know that an item is either self-service or staff-assisted because of the type of item. We know what category it falls under, and we can filter by self-service, staff-assisted, or referral, and we can filter by employment, training, support, or assessment. So if we're looking for our employment goals, we can click on that and then filter by type, and it will give me just the employment goals that are there. So maybe we need to get skills and experience with community service, or maybe we need to find events in your area to help you prepare or find a job. Maybe we need to get ready for job search by being organized. So if we want to add any of those things, and we do have some suggestions to the right-hand side for CYEP, Building Futures, Career Pathways, different programs that these steps might be associated with. So if we add the programs, we're going to get the community service skills. It tells me that it's been added. We can find exercises for a particular area, and then maybe we want to prepare our job search plan. Now we want to look for education. Now this is the important piece. Some of you have asked about if on the performance report, if they are getting their GED, will you get credit for that? And the answer, or if they move on to secondary education, will you get credit for that? If you add that the customer is going to go to training at some form or another, the attend adult education and literacy classes are for the GED, and then there is a step in here, or a plan piece that you can add that actually refers to secondary education. So since we added the GED on this customer, we're going to add this step that says attend adult education and literacy classes. If that step gets completed, then the customer will show up under your performance for getting that GED, or if they do the secondary education, then you'll get credit on your performance report for the moving on to college, basically. Now, once you have these steps in here, what do we want to do? And I'm hearing myself in somebody's computer there. So it comes down here to the second step. So now what do we want to do? You can open up your microphone, or you can type into the chat
pod. Good afternoon, this is Damira from AHS. I think that we now have to add those goals and step services, how we will reach those goals.
Very good. Good answer. Good answer. I feel like I'm on, what is that Family Feud program? Good answer. Good answer. All right. So what we do is we click on the pencil, and it will open up that plan item for the customer. In here, we want to make sure that we fill in all of the information on here. So we want to pick one of the goals. So this one was the education. So we want to get the GED as the goal. We want to pick whether or not it's planned or started. So once we hit started here, then it will change it on the goal. It will change the status on the goal under the goal page. we're going to pick today's date as the date that we're starting. The due date, we know that this person only has to do one test. So we're going to give them 3 weeks to get that done. So we're going to give them until June 18th. I think that's actually 4 weeks, but weekly hours, how much are they going to dedicate to the time for that step or goal? We're going to give them 15 hours a week. Is this WIOA funded or not? That's just a yes or no question, and you know whether or not your program works with WIOA and whether or not the customer is co-enrolled. So that's a yes or no. I'm going to put yes on this one. Special instructions, if there are any, would be answered. And then there's what does this particular service address of the self-identified barriers, challenges that the customer indicated? And which one would you guys say that it addresses?
Limited education.
Yes, very good. If you need to see if there's more that would apply, you can click the more, and then you can pick other challenges or barriers that might apply to that customer's participating in this particular item. Once you're done with this page, you can update the customer service. It will take you back to the top and show you that you have done that particular piece. You also want to include service provider. It will automatically pick your organization, but if it's not being provided by your organization, then you would want to pick the other provider and fill in the logistical information for that organization. We're going to leave it as Austin's People Action Center because you're going to help them study, and so we don't have to update anything there. Is there a dollar value for this service? If there is, then you're going to put that in there, and how many times it's offered at that cost. I don't know, maybe it's only $25 to take one of those tests. So we're going to make that 25 then instead. Once you hit save, it adds that cost to this list so that you can see what's associated cost value for that. This is very good if it's especially for a supportive service, like maybe a bus pass or a gas card, depending on what part of the state you're in. So you can put in how many times you will give them a gas card, at what value, or the bus pass. And then, are there any credentials that are earned with this particular piece? And you can add from the credential registry if there is a program in there associated with it, or you can add it manually. And I'm going to type GED. What's the credential source? You're going to get a copy of the diploma or well, what do they get when they get a GED? It might be the certificate, but we're going to say diploma on this one. What date did they actually attain it? So we gave them until June 18th. We're going to assume that they did it. Credential type, it is a general education development. And then what's the institution? I'm going to say Chicago Public Schools, or Chicago, oh wait, it might be Chicago Regional Office of Education. And the description, and simple, simple, simple. We're going to save that. Once that's finally completed, then the credential gets added. So this is good to know here for this, especially in your performance. We're not going after education necessarily, but we do know that GEDs and high school diplomas are very important for customers to be able to get some jobs, and some jobs with sustainability. All right, so that is getting the career plan put together. You would do that particular piece for each of these items, and then as you complete that, it shows their start date, whether the goal is on target or associated with one of the customer goals, and then what else you have associated with that. Now, say that it's now June 18th and the customer has completed that. You would want to come back into their plan, click the pencil, change the status to successful completion if they do actually successfully complete. So this is where you keep track of the goals for your customers and whether they've started them or completed them or unsuccessfully completed them. We're going to leave this one as started for right now. Anytime you make some updates, you want to click the update goal just so that everything is current. All right, do we have any questions from anybody about the career plan and making sure that everything is in place?
If we are keeping this information in our paper files, is this also where you would like us to keep all of the detailed information on all the support services within Worknet?
Yes, you would track the support services here.
Okay.
So under their build a plan, if you need to provide transportation, you would want to find one of the goals in here about providing transportation, uniforms and all that other kind of activity that you provide for the customers. And the completion of services, just so that you know, the completion of services counts on the performance reports that you have to do. So you do want to keep track of this keep track of these steps for all of your customers. Are we ready to move on to the next piece? Okay, next piece is case notes. So what happens in the case notes section? Well, nobody wants to give me the obvious answer.
We have to add the whole interaction with the clients documented through the case notes.
Yes, very good. And some of them are system generated, some of them are added by you. Most of them are going to be added by the career navigator or the caseworker. So on here, you can add a case note, and it lets you select a task. We're going to talk about training for this one. We're going to talk about started PED. So you just put in whatever note. You can select how you want the information to be saved in the system. And then you can, if you're going to send a message, who you want the message to be sent to. I'm going to add this case note. Also on here, you can filter by task, date, subject, comment, how it was delivered, who entered it, the day and time that it was entered. The other piece that you can do is you can export these case notes. So if you happen to use Salesforce or another database system, it will export the case notes in an Excel document so that you can save the case notes, copy and paste them into your system. So you really only have to type once. My suggestion is to take it backwards, take it from Worknet to your system, and that way you can export all of the case notes. I know that in Salesforce, it doesn't let you, we can't accept the CSV file that you might want to put it in or the import. So it's easier to export it out of Worknet and import it into your system. And sorry, that's just the way the system works right now. Any questions about the case notes? All right, moving on, we have the assessments tab. The assessments tab is very similar to the review assessments tab that's inside of the career plan. So if you don't see it in one place, you can see it here. I'm not going to go over this again, but it does give you the results if a customer has taken their NOCD, if they have completed their Employment 101. We do have the observational evaluation and the worksite evaluation that are very beneficial during job search training, or I'm sorry, career training, career coach training. You can use that observational evaluation. And then once a student is working, you can use the worksite evaluation with the employer to get some feedback for the students so that they can be successful. We have worksite placement. So how do we add a position or a student here?
We have to add the worksite first, and after that connect our clients with the worksite.
Very good. So how do I do that? And let's get a new person to answer that question.
Yeah. Add worksite placement. Click on that.
Okay, we click on the add worksite placement.
Yeah.
And on here, we can pick what's the next step. And if anybody else would like to answer, just open up your microphone or type it into the chat pod. Okay, we need to select our project. Sometimes you might have access to more than one project. So I'm going to select CYEP for this particular one. Some of you may be providing services for a couple of different programs. So we've got CYEP and who are we? So you may only have access to one provider based on your login. For CYEP, all employment is considered permanent employment. So that's why this option is not editable. I always have a hard time with that word. So then we want to filter. That gives us only the programs that are the employers that are associated with this program that offer permanent employment. So what's the next step that we need to do? Anybody?
Add customers to employment.
All right. So which job do you want to pick? Pick one of the jobs.
First one.
Well, I can't because
No, that's the quality tester.
quality testers. All right, so I'm going to add a customer, and I'm going to look for my customer unless I don't see them right here on the first page. And I'm working on Red House, so I'm going to add the customer. And on here, it now opens up so that I can put in the detail information. So I know that some of you are reimbursing your employers and some of you are paying your employees, the customers. So what we want to do is we want to enter the minimum wage for the placement. So that is going to be the whatever the wage is for that job. So I'm going to say $11. Oops, too many zeros. The hourly wage for the placement is $11. What are you subsidizing for that wage? And I believe everybody's contract says $7.75. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then once we have that in there, it tells me automatically that the unsubsidized wage that the customer that the employer needs to match is $3.25. I have some background noise, so if somebody's talking to somebody else,
I'm sorry.
Use your phone. All right. So next, we want to pick what the position type is. Is it full-time or part-time? I'm going to pick part-time here. Then the next piece here is the status. Did they start the job? Is it just planned? Is it on hold? So I know that at the in-person meeting we had a discussion about, well, what happens if the customer has an accident or they go abroad to school? And the item here would then be, once this customer has already started working, we would come in here and put them on hold, and that would stop their 90-day time. So does everybody understand that piece right here?
Yeah.
Any questions about that from anybody? Okay, we're going to put that the customer has started, so their clock starts today. And we're going to not put an end date in because they haven't stopped working yet. I'm going to save this. Subsidized wage, training wage is greater than the minimum wage for this placement. Do you want to continue? Yes, save these changes. Okay, so now it's going to update my list and show me that for the quality testers, I have 3 part-time positions filled where before I only had 2. And we had 2 on here, or I'm sorry, we had more here. So it's moving it around on the position. So then if I click on this number, it takes me to my list of people and I can edit. So say Red House, got that on there twice. I'm going to have to talk to my programmers and make sure this is not happening in real life, in what we call production. All right, so when we edit the customer, this is where we would go in and say that the customer maybe is inactive or maybe they lost the job, they were terminated. We would go in and edit that position. It also shows us in here of any of the follow-ups that are required. And You do have to do a 30-day, you have to do a conversation with the customer every 30 days. The system is only going to track your performance on this at the 30, 60, 90, 180, and 270. But DHS has requested that you follow up with the customer, get pay stubs, whatever, all of that kind of information from that customer every 30 days. That's one way to find out if there's any challenges happening for them on the job. And it's also a good way to stay in touch with the customer to make sure that they are getting the supportive services that they need and that they're doing well on the job. This is a great tool when you're pitching to the employer about staying in touch with and following up with that customer so that they know that there is more support for them on their job than just their human resources department. All right, so we're going to cancel out of this, but it also shows the history of what's happened with that customer. I'm going to cancel out of here. Oh goodness, cancel, yes, save these changes. Being slow today. All right. If you are keeping the customer on your payroll as the training wage for the customer for their 90 days, you do need to enter payroll. And that's done on this tab. If you need to get to this, it's from the worksite placement tab here. You can upload payroll from this place by adding payroll and doing a start date and an end date, downloading the template, putting in the hours, and then uploading the payroll template here. This is on video, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time on the adding payroll right now. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Hey, Dee, I do have a question.
Sure.
So if we are doing the reimbursements to the employer, are you saying that we don't need to go through the payroll tab? Or should we still do that since we do have the pay stubs from the employer? Do we still do that? Or do we not need to do the payroll tab?
I believe since it's reimbursement, it is just an expense, but that is a Nicole question that I need to get answered. So if you would happen to please send that question off to Nicole and copy me on it so that I can see the response, then I'll know for future reference. But I'm almost positive that it is a part of your reimbursable expenses, not the payroll piece.
Because we've always been doing it the opposite way. So should we, I'm trying to make sure whether we should discontinue that. But we've been doing the payroll tab for the reimbursements also to keep track of them. But yeah, we'll send that to Nicole.
That's probably not a bad idea because then somebody knows that you have seen the wages and that you know that the customer has worked X number of hours and you're reimbursing them for that. So it's probably not a bad idea, but I would still get Nicole to confirm what they want to do with that.
Okay.
And then I will make sure that that gets brought up on our next TA session if we can get an answer from her before next Tuesday. Thank you for asking the question. If you need to add more employers, or if your employer is not showing up in here, you click on the Employers tab. Again, select your project. Excuse me, what agency you're with. What the payroll status is. And this could be, I'm sorry, this is not where we do it. So from worksite placement, I apologize. we want to add an employer or a work site. It's making this idiot proof for me. It's telling me where my mistakes are. And we're going to add employer or work site. I want to add a new employer. The name, I'm going to pick Project Oz. And is this employer also the work site? Yes. Description, I'm going to do customer service representative. Got to spell it right. Website URL is not required, but you're welcome to put that in there. I can look up an NAICS code, and if I just start typing here and search, it will tell me all right. Test is being a little wonky today. I apologize. I'm going to look up a title. I apologize. This should not be doing this right now. But we get those numbers, we get those codes, and if you need to know what the pieces are, you can click on the info bubble. Add the phone number, who the primary contact is. Next step. It's not going to let me go to the next step because I don't have those NAICS codes. But on the next step, you need to add the job title information and then add that employer in. So let me try and get back to the list so that I can kind of show you from somebody that's already in there. So we have quality testers, the NAICS information, and it gives, I apologize, this is just not doing what I want it to do right now. We'll cover worksite additions on next meeting as well. I do want to talk about the we talked about adding payroll, permanent employment. One of the things that we wanted to bring up was that on Google Chrome, if your customers are completing their application, Google Chrome may autofill some of the slots in the forms. So make sure that they are typing all of their own information into the form so that they're not getting somebody else's last name. One of the things that you can do is on the customer's profile, if you do discover that something is wrong, you can go back into the application information, scroll down to the bottom, and edit a section, and it will allow you to change the last name from Smith to Bundy if that happened to have been entered wrongly on the application because of an autofill situation. The other thing that I want to cover before we've been here for an hour is on your profile on Illinois Worknet. We need to make sure that all of the information is current and up to date. So from Illinois Worknet, when you are logged in, go to My Dashboard, and under the Partner Tools, you have a Service Finder Administration. And that will take you, by clicking on that, it will take you to this page that we're on. You will only have access to your site, or any site that you're associated with, I guess I should say. So if you have multiple locations, you'll have access to multiple sites. But on here, you want to make sure that your information is current and up to date. Maybe you've had a change in your leadership person, or you have a new phone number, or I know in the case of some of the organizations, you may have moved recently. So you want to go in and make sure that you are editing your information so that everything is current and up to date that would show up for a customer in the service locator information. And one of the things that you want to do is make sure that you have a description in here. Is this open to the general public? Are there services, what your office hours are? Are there services that you provide that are not being filled in there? And then once you approve all of this and continue, you can see that there is more information that might need to be changed. For example, I know this person is no longer with this organization, so that's one piece that would need to be changed automatically. Go in and check for referral information, check all of these different pieces. We have referral information, we have WIOA information, who's the contacts, what are your social media sites? Do you have any special programs? What are your audiences and the services that you provide? This is a really important piece. So you want to make sure that this information is completed and kept up to date. Maybe you've changed your ages that you go to a maximum of 36 now. It's just something that you might want to consider. So making sure that all of these boxes are checked, that all of the information is there and available, you can save and continue. And then across the top, you can preview what it's going to look like on your public view for customers that might run across you at the service locator information. All right, do we have any questions about the service locator information? Okay, we're going to cover the PPR report next time. We're going to cover adding a work site so that I can make sure that that's working properly. And if there's any other issues that come up during the course of the week, we will make sure that we get those covered as well. Any questions from anybody before we close our session for today? All right. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay, you too. Thank you for everything.
You're welcome.